Hey y'all, we are back. Some stuff to talk about, I guess. Yeah, Trump was arraigned, but before we get into that, the classic, as always, got my tea at the ready. We're back with some of the Dorian Earl Grey. Still too hot to drink. But there's a lot of really cool stuff to talk about regarding this, in particular in relation to what we were talking about yesterday. Some stuff that I kind of want to, I guess, reappraise. So I was aware that oftentimes court cases take a long time, and my assumption was that the the Trump legal team would be interested in delaying as much as possible, so if he can if it can last 5 years and by that point he can win an election and pardon himself or something, that kind of thing. This way he doesn't have to deal with it. But as I understand it, and let's see if I can find a statement on the subject. The DOJ uh, expects this to be a pretty short trial. So let's see if I can find. NPR getting ahead of us. Um, Let me see, because I had seen some information. I can't. Of course, I'm not going to be able to find it now. Uh, but yeah, here we can see. Even here, the the expectation was the trial would be within 70 days, starting as soon as August. Obviously, we've started earlier than that. This is not exactly a new article. Um, okay, I don't see it, but as I understand, the expectation from the DOJ was that this trial they expect to last less than a month. I think they said something like 27 days, something pretty quick like that, which is surprising to me because despite the fact that we have a right to a speedy trial according to the Constitution, that's not exactly what happens. In fact, there's kind of an epidemic of people who have been in jail waiting for their trial so long that once they're sentenced, they're simply released because they've already spent more time than that in that jail. So uh, the expectation is it's going to be pretty quick, and because of that, I guess we'll see the ramifications much more. Like that's pretty makes me pretty optimistic that we'll see some stuff happen uh, in the short term, as opposed to we find out 10 years from now, like, oh, I guess he got indicted, or he got convicted, and nobody cares anymore, so it doesn't matter if his sentence is that big a deal. Now people will be on the lookout. That said, the arraignment was today, and so what does that mean? Obviously, it's he's declaring whether he's guilty or not guilty, as NPR already spoiled for those who were looking at the Google results. He pled not guilty. I I really hope nobody is terribly surprised by this information. This guy uh, is his entire career is based on claiming to be the best and never do anything wrong. Oh, hi, Galit. Um, and so, yeah, obviously, yeah, of course, there was never any way he was gonna plead guilty, right? Like, we knew that. So, obviously, he was gonna plead not guilty. That happened just a while ago. I had heard since then, and you know what? I want to investigate this before I get too much into the story. I had mm, not so not so credible information, but I had heard from a friend of mine that there's claims of Trump having been arrested again, which would be very surprising to me because he only shortly ago left the courthouse for his arraignment. I can't imagine why he would be arrested. As I understand it, he's not considered a flight risk, probably because he's always around Secret Service. It's not like he can just like. I mean, I would assume like my my unconsidered assumption would be, like most people, that like, oh, but he has all this money and power, but he's also constantly surrounded by agents of the United States government, so it's not like he's going to be able to get away. So it'd be very surprising to me if he were arrested again. And I know TMZ um, isn't particularly trustworthy. So I'm gonna look. So we're going into this with an assumption of inaccuracy, or more accurate, with a lot of skepticism. We're gonna see. There's so oh, okay. I think I understand now. Because it's starting here. As officially arrived at court and getting arrested and booked for his indictment regarding the droves of classified documents, authority says he has washed away Mar-a-Lago. Stashed away at Mar-a-Lago. Um, Perhaps this is a very specific, technical understanding of arrested. Um, Maybe that's with the idea that, as part of the process, you were technically quote unquote arrested, but he was released on his own recognizance, is my understanding. He left the courthouse. Um, uh, yeah, so let me see. I don't see. All right, let's take a look here. Let's see if there. Okay, okay, you can stop now. Yeah. Okay. So no, he was not arrested. This was a matter of like booking as part of the process. That's kind of what I figured. It seemed really weird. Like, or more accurately, even maybe arrested in a legal sense means something a little bit different. But he was not taken into custody. He left the courthouse. All that stuff. And one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit is only kind of tangentially related, because even through all this and the you would expect a lot of MAGA protesters at the courthouse. I mean, we saw January 6th, right? You'd think the beginning of the court trial, where their daddy Trump can maybe go to prison. I'll That's one of those, as far as him going to prison. As I'm gonna pause a moment. You might be wondering whether I think he will actually spend any time in prison. I I'm hopeful but skeptical. I don't know. This is the kind of, obviously it's never happened before. I think it would be great if he did, irrespective. Well, some people would say, yeah. I see. I feel the same thing as chat saying. I doubt he'll go to prison. I I also I'm just so used to living in this system where if you have wealth and power, you're just not going to face repercussions for your actions. I'm hopeful that that will not be the case, because this is kind of a first, and it's already bad enough that we have a precedent of nothing happens with an impeachment and it's just for show. I'd like I'd like a little bit to set I'd like to set a precedent that, that if you get charged, even being a former president doesn't protect you. But I'm not. I don't know. I also have that same feeling you do, chat, of like, rich people don't go to prison. Politicians don't go to prison. As much as there is the claim of a fair and unbiased system, that's just not how things are. That's just not how the world is, and it sucks. Um, but I dare to dream, and you may say I'm a dreamer, but hopefully I'm not the only one. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And oh, I lost my train of thought from all this. Yeah, I'm not sure if he'll spend any time in prison, but it'd be kind of nice. And because that's what's at stake here, you would expect kind of a lot of turnout, but there wasn't much in the way of protest. I'm not gonna try to find any news articles talking about the lack of protest, because that seems kind of weird. But even despite the fact that energy's kind of uh, there's kind of a lack of energy, and there's a little bit of this like, well, what if some of this stuff happens? Uh, it seems that he is still the favorite in the primary against DeSantis. I am desperately trying to find a good graph or graphic even. Oh my god. But of course, every liberal news station has freaking ad blockers. Uh, okay. When was this? No, this is February. Um, it's really frustrating. Of like, this is a problem. Um, because uh, now it's becomes very difficult to find the information from a source that's not literally Newsmax. Um, let me see if I can find. Okay, you guys are just gonna. All right, you guys are coming along for the journey while we look for some polling data. Uh, okay, this is almost what I want. Republican primary. And this is polling ending yesterday. All right, cool, cool, cool. So, as of June 12th, okay, so it's from 5:38. I don't know. Hopefully, this is pretty accurate. Trump is leading by pretty significant amount over DeSantis. 43% to 22% is a pretty huge margin. And there might be a little bit of wondering of like, okay, if all the energy, if some of this energy seems to be dying out, if there's not the kind of fervor there once was, is like people aren't really showing up that much. Though uh, I guess that that margin has narrowed a bit. So maybe that's what we're seeing here. Actually, maybe okay. So what I was gonna say is like, why isn't DeSantis coming up? But it looks like maybe he is based on the numbers we're seeing here. Maybe this gap is narrowing, but I guess as of the night, oh, I guess these are from all sorts of from many some from different sources. So uh, it's a little uncertain, but clearly he's still leading in the polls, and you might be wondering like why. And I tend to agree with the idea that this just has a lot to do with what people on the right are looking for and what they expect. And ultimately, the Republican Party is pushing further and further into fascism. That is, as much as people like to say it's hyperbolic, I think unquestionable. And while DeSantis is a much more efficient fascist than Trump, Trump seems to be more. Well, he does have reactionary tendencies, but he's just kind of a dipshit. He's opportunistic and he cares about Trump, and then like the fascism part might follow thereafter because well he just cares about Trump and like you'll get there I guess. And like president for life sounds good to him, but he doesn't specifically care about the things that fascists necessarily care about. And he has this sense of being a strong man, and that has always been really wild to me because I don't know, it seems to me from any perspective that isn't already committed or like already sold on the appearance of strength that Trump wants to have or tries to present. He looks like the least strong person. Like I don't understand in a way why he's considered to be a strong man. This guy is the most insecure public figure I've seen in a long, long, long time. Um, I'm gonna see if I can find it. There's for example, okay, this might be exactly what I'm talking about. Here is a phenomenal example. This is well worn at this point. I think you're more likely to have heard this from John Oliver on his show last week tonight. That's where I've heard about this in the first place. Than you are from me, but this is kind of emblematic of what I'm talking about. Let me see if I can find Okay, here we are. Nearly 30 years ago, Graydon Carter, the editor of Vanity Fair magazine, described Trump in Spy magazine as a short-fingered vulgarian. In the letters edited of Vanity Fair last November, so this would have been, when did this article come out? 2016. So this would have been in 2015. Uh, Last November, Carter said that he wrote the Sky magazine comment in 1988 just to drive him a little bit crazy. In order to Carter, it still does. Like many bullies, Trump has skin of gossamer. Oh my God, so true. To this day, I receive occasional envelope from Trump. There's always a photo of him, generally a tear sheet from a magazine. On all of them, he has circled his hands in a gold Sharpie in a valiant effort to highlight the length of his fingers. Carter wrote, I almost feel sorry for the poor fellow because to me the fingers still look abnormally stubby. And I want to encourage everyone here. This is so incredibly telling. Look past the claims. Like look past the issue about his fingers. Who gives a shit about his fucking fingers? What matters is that all these years later, almost 30 years after this, it still bothers him so much that someone insulted him once that he's like trying to be like, no, no, see, look, my fingers are normal. This is not confidence. This is not strongman shit. This is just incredible. Just absolute incredible insecurity. And this is what I mean. It's just so confusing me. I guess it makes sense in some way because a lot of Trump has also been described as a poor person's idea of a rich person. This is also a very insecure person's view of what confidence looks like. Because a lot of times I think we're used to confidence as coming off of like these really arrogant guys who do whatever. But under the surface, he is so and it's not even that deep under the surface. Like really think about it. If you're confident in who you are you going to spend as much time as Trump does trying to prove to everybody how good and wonderful you are and be so desperate for everyone to think you're this awesome? Wouldn't you just be secure in knowing who you are? Like I have people in my comment section every now and again. I mean, not a lot because I'm still pretty small, but like I have people showing up to like talk shit and okay, sure, I don't really care, because it's stupid. What they're saying is ridiculous. If you really didn't care, if someone called me a short-fingered vulgarian, I think at most I might be like Bulgarian, but like the short-fingered part, I'm like, okay, like no. And if it was true, like who cares? Uh, this is not what confidence looks like, and I'm not gonna claim to be the most confident guy, but this is absurd. And this is the kind of thing like I've been wanting to talk about this for so long because my family, some of them, quite a big fan of Trump, and one of the things they go to is like they like that he's strong, and I don't. It's been that's just been such an insane statement to me for so long. I just have to talk about it, and it's coming up again because here we are, where his appearance of strength apparently is getting him ahead in the polls, and it's just so wild to me. But having thought about that a lot because this is what I do, I can't stop. It's my curse, my eternal curse. I have thought about this a lot, and I think there's a little bit of. I just wanted to talk about confidence a little bit and what that looks like and why it does it. This guy, uh, with his stupid little face, is not what that looks like. So, because I think a lot of people when they like think of confidence, they think of like cowboys and shit, or like people who strength is also in the eye of the beholder. Um, I only partially agree because it's to some extent right, like the eye of the beholder, like determine whether they think someone is strong, but there is an extent to which this is testable, right? Like it's not the same. I guess a good example is like if you have a building, um, like if you have a building like this one, let's take this one as a good example. some number of people will be like, oh, that looks cool. And some number of people will say, ah, no, it doesn't. And when we say it's in the eye of the beholder, what we kind of mean is that, no, that's not really true. Oh, you were joking? Well, too bad. I'm taking you seriously. Deal with it. Uh, it's too late. You got me. I'm already invested. Um, but like, if someone says this is like well constructed, there's an empirical test. If this thing collapses, no, it's not. And what we see from Trump constantly is him just absolutely collapsing. And that's the whole thin wristed thing and whatever else. And it's something I wanted to talk about because I think there are different forms of confidence, and part of the problem that people have is they force themselves into certain versions of it. Trump to me feels like he's forcing himself into the version of confidence that's just like, that big dick swagger everyone thinks of. The I can walk in a room and command the room and everybody likes me and yada yada etc. Um, but I think there's more to it than that. This is something I think is exemplified by someone like the streamer Vosh, who I think is a legitimately confident person. That seems pretty clear. But his style of confidence isn't the only one. I don't think he'd claim that it is. I just mean to say that I want to contrast it with some other versions of confidence because I think people could. I don't know. I think it'd be helpful to people. For myself, for example, I found like a lot of confidence just coming from being honest with myself. And I just, when you just say, okay, I'm not gonna say I'm shit at everything because that's not really being honest, and that alleviates. And when you do that, it alleviates a lot of insecurity. Now you don't have that worry of like, oh, I'm just garbage at everything. Like you're not lying to yourself, and so you won't feel as insecure. You like, then when you're honest and say, oh no, this is something I can do, I can handle. I'm good at this. These are strengths that I have. Statements like that just is confidence, right? You're being honest, and that honesty is leading you to being like, okay, if I'm in this situation, I'm not worried. I know I can handle it, and you don't need to do any extra anything on top of that. That's just I've just described confidence, right? That is another version of that, and that can come along. That ought to, I think, come along with honesty about. Well, that means there are some things I'm not going to be able to handle, or maybe I'll like waver a little bit about this, and that's okay too. And for the my fellow young people, I think there are a couple of versions of confidence that people talk about, and some that I feel go under discussed, even though people are so like this guy. He's pretty confident, right? Um, like anyone who's seen Lord of the Ring movies, Aragorn, like he he seems to have it like he'll like throw himself into stuff, just being like, I can handle this. Sometimes he's not certain if he could. He grows a bit in that regard too, right? He's not really confident that he could be the king of Gondor, and he's scared of that part of himself. But he grows into it and uh, and like gains the inner strength to become who he was meant to be, the true whatever. That's not the point. We talk about the confidence of Aragorn. We talk less, though still to an amount, to some extent. Oh, this lovable guy. I just want the picture. Look at this guy. He's so goddamn cute. Uh, if you don't know who Uncle Iroh is, watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's a great show. But that should be like exactly three people. This is like your wise old uncle guy, and he's very oh, okay, yeah. I figured you wouldn't know. So I recommend watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's a very good show. This is Uncle Iroh. A brief synopsis: he's like the uncle of one of the main characters who starts as a villain, and then, well, he has his own journey or whatever. And throughout the whole thing, he's a source of wisdom and guidance. And um, you can watch it, not right now, but you can watch it. I think it's on Netflix or something. Uh, he's a source of guidance and whatever. He's also the younger brother the the basically the evil king, I guess, is the short version of it. And when there's the power squabble of like who can defeat the king, Iroh's even asked, and he's like, "No, I don't think that would be right, even if I could do it." There's that humility in combination with wisdom that I think is a great show of this. But what he does say he can do is conquer the biggest city in the world, and he then does. It's an understanding of what you're able to do, what you can handle. Um, you don't want to make time to watch it. It's a great show. Watch it. Nah, all right, you do you. If you want to watch it, don't. But yeah, it's just the kind of thing that I think of all the time. And while people do talk about his confidence sometimes, I think it is under discussed. And this is another version of it. Whereas normally we're used to like to use an example from the same show, which I know you. We often look at Toph as an example, who is just incredibly powerful and very, very self-assured. Usually, just comfortable going out on her own, so on and so forth. But you see a little cracks in the armor every now and again, and this is another way of being like that. And I think that's okay. I think that's an okay way to be, and just like the idea that there are different ways of approaching this, and in no way to bring it back to everything. Uh, in no way is this guy that Mr. Pouty Face. In no way. He just doesn't have any of these trappings. Notice he's always talking himself up. He has the best words. He is the smartest guy. He has the best team. Never never building in the idea of like, well, I've assembled a lot of people who've done a lot of good. No, it's always like hyperbolic. It's always the best and the most. It's always they're out to get me. I'm so put upon, even though I'm the best ever. It's this constant like I'm better at everything than everyone, but also I'm always unjustly being attacked, and that's what's holding me back. It's excuses for his failures, and anything that's positive in his life, he take, or even in the world, he tries to take full positive credit for as if he was the only one, because the only goal is make himself feel better about who he is, because he doesn't feel good about that normally. He's massively insecure. And the idea that he's this like strongman, I mean, he is in the sense that a lot of political strongmen are exactly like this, but that's not. He's not strong. He's weak. He's extremely weak because he's incredibly insecure, has no assurance in himself other than I deserve to be on top, which is the only thing he seems pretty consistent in. But that's not confidence, that's arrogance. And that's, being a demanding, pouty little baby. I hope that makes sense. I just kind of wanted to muse on that for a bit. And while we're at it, while we're just musing, I actually even wanted to, I forgot, I wanted to put this in my title. Let me adjust the title of the stream real quick, because now, uh, I forgot I wanted to talk about this as well. While I was on my trip, just on the flight over to the other side of the country, I happened to rewatch Mulan, which is, at least as long as I'm not forgetting any of note, my favorite Disney movie. I love it so much. And there are a couple of really interesting things that stood out to me about it. And well, since you have to sit here and listen to me, you have no other choice. Closing the window or turning off your computer is actually illegal. Not allowed to do it. Since you're stuck here, you're going to listen to me talk about it. As I will remind you, you have no other choice. But some stuff was pretty interesting to me about it. In particular, what it what I saw as being said about gender. I know there are a lot of people have talked about trans readings of Mulan. This isn't exactly that, mostly because well, I'm not trans. This is more my reading and what I saw in it. But I do know this is a little bit discussed. I think not necessarily in the way that I'm going to talk about it though. So I'm gonna find a couple of instances of what I'm talking about, but I'm going to not actually play any of the songs that we're going to talk about because it just I don't want to get DMCA issues. Uh, so let me mute this before it gets going. All right, we're still looking at my face. So there is this song, "Honor to Us All," wherein it's Mulan preparing to meet the matchmaker, and she's doing all this getting ready and like all the makeup, the hair, the whole deal, getting ready to meet the matchmaker. And I think it's pretty clear through the context of the movie that this is not great. That there are these expectations that are placed on women in this society that have issues just because Mulan is a kind of person that doesn't really jive with her, right? It seems to be kind of in the sense, at the very least, from when I watch it, it feels like the movie is trying to imply that there's a dissonance between what is expected of a woman and who Mulan is, who is presumably a woman, right? This is where a lot of trans readings go with it. I'm not necessarily going to go that direction, but I do want. But we'll start there, right? It's even laid out as to what these virtues are. Okay, this video doesn't get to that part. Right after the scene where Mulan meets the matchmaker, she's even like asked to recount what the virtues are that are expected of her, things like obedience and whatnot. I'm like, okay, fine. We're still like very level one reading of this. Where I think there's a little bit of a difference is when we contrast this with "Make a Man and I'll Make a Man Out of You," because this song, I think, emotionally, I'm just gonna assume everyone's seen this movie. So if you haven't, uh, tough. Emotionally, it feels very very empowering, right? Like, oh, this being a big strong man, look at I get to be like the strength of a raging fire, mysterious as the moon, that's awesome. But when I thought about it this time, I went, hold on, isn't this the exact same thing we saw in reverse, or not in reverse, but like for women in the song we were just talking about in Bring Honor to Us All? These are traits expected of men that if there are to be men, they must live up to, centered entirely around the ability to go to war, as opposed to with women centered entirely around the ability to please your husband. And this idea, and there's just a bunch of stuff going on here. This I found really interesting. For one, it's this very narrow view of what masculinity is. It sounds really empowering, but let's be real. Is this really what it is to be a man? Well, for one, I like that this movie, which came out in 1998, has a view of it demonstrates a world where people have very traditional views of gender, and it's so very clear that this is not a biological discussion, right? We've had this come up before when it comes to the issues of whether trans people are their identified gender. People insist, historically we've always used biologically essentialist determinations. If you are biologically male, you are a man. Well, then why does this song make sense? Like, shouldn't it not? Shouldn't this song and the previous one we looked at, shouldn't they make absolutely no sense whatsoever? How could I have to train and learn to be a man? I am just male. I can just I just am that already. What are you talking about? Well, clearly there's a lot about being a man that the expectations of being a man that have nothing to do with that whatsoever. In fact, Mulan as Ping manages to meet a lot of these expectations, or at the very least to be considered a man, despite not being biologically male at all. So clearly there's like even in a very traditionalist view that it's just not true that biology has been the nature of gender. So I want to get that out of the way. But also you see I think this song actually works in the exact same way that Honor to Us All did. It's just for men instead. In that, in Honor to Us All, this wasn't the song itself wasn't wasn't in opposition to the expectations that women had. It wasn't saying that they're bad things. In fact, it looked at them very favorably. All these women are very proud, seem very well at the very least outwardly appear to be very happy about fulfilling their role. It's even called Honor to Us All. The idea behind the entire song is that doing this, being like this, fulfilling the expectations put on you brings honor to you and your family. It's seen as extremely positive, just like it is in Be a Man. So why do they feel so different? And I think only the only real difference is that Mulan very much does not jive with either, honestly, but feels more pressingly the need to fulfill being a man. Uh, and because it that's and I do want to get to like, okay, does she fulfill the role of being a man? Because I just said that she doesn't fulfill either. Clearly, she doesn't jive with the womanly expectation. She wants to speak her mind. She wants to be free to express herself. Both things that I think are positive and should be available to all people. Uh, but then when it comes to be a man, like like by the end, it's like, oh, she's uh, as Ping, she is doing all the same things. I don't know if I should be saying he because in that moment is just as a man. I don't really know, but like here able to do all the things these men are doing, considered a man. But just before this, literally just before this, you get the line, "You're unsuited for the rage of war. Go home." I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but he's pack up, go home, you're through. First of all, cementing the idea that these this view of being a man is you need to be ready for war to be a man, which I think it's very clear to anyone who's thought about it with any like for any length of time. That's not true at all. There are a lot of people who we would consider very authentically men, even by traditional standards, that are not suitable for war. A great example, Mulan's father in this movie. He's very clearly a man and an honorable one and a respected one by all accounts. Everyone, like even the captain here, when he heard, or was it the captain? Yeah, I think it was the captain when he heard uh, that Mulan was from the Fa family. It was like kind of odd that he got to meet someone from that family because her father was so respected for being ready for war, but now isn't anymore. That's kind of the whole plot. So clearly, there's more to being a man than being suitable for war, but that's the expectation, right? This is a great, just such a great one of the things this movie does so well is this view of gender and expressing how it can be really limiting, even while not doing it, even while not trying to. I don't think this sequence is intended to take issue with the expectations of being a man. It's very it's triumphant. It feels very empowering. Is like you can be like this. Is supposed to make you feel like yeah I can be like that. But instead it shows like no you're not ready for war. You can't if you're not ready for war you can't do it. In fact we see with some of the other characters the way they struggle. One of them is really skinny and not particularly fit, so he's not sufficiently a man. One of them eats a lot and is a pacifist, or at the very least is a lot more gentle, and so he has to work to become a man. He's not just a man on his own, but especially if you've seen Avatar, where we just talked about, like Iroh is another good example. A lot of that can be part of masculinity, and I think it is. Or a better example, uh, Samwise Gamgee. Uh, a very actually no, I think this isn't as good. This isn't as good an example as this right here. Hope you can see it. Yeah, in Lord of the Rings, they have this tender moment of Boromir is dying, Aragorn very sad for the loss of his friends, tenderly kisses him on the head. Even these men who are ready for war, who are trained for it, very good at doing it, this is a very masculine version of it, but of tenderness, but it is tenderness, and that is like authentically masculine in a way that well, I mean, I don't want to like gatekeep it to being masculine, but they're still authentically men as they're showing genuine emotion for their fallen comrade. But this isn't the kind of thing that we talk about with like traditional masculinity. And what's more, going back to Mulan, what does Mulan do as Ping to be accepted back? Right, she was told to go home. None of the other what none of the men could do. She gets the arrow down, right? And she doesn't do it by being by possessing the virtues that the song says that you ought to have, be strong and swift and forceful and mysterious things to be and be a man, but like by no means necessary. No, the way she does it is by being resourceful and clever and using her brain to think to approach the problem in a way that not only works for her but works in general. And I think that's another thing to look at. Of in a way, like the movie doesn't say it, and I don't think it even really expects you to notice the contrast between what is expected and what is expected of Mulan, and then what she actually does to be considered authentically a man. She's, like I said, resourceful and intelligent. I mean, now the commander doesn't see the captain here doesn't see how she got up there. But the point is that resourcefulness, that cleverness, well, it's not what the movie is saying or what like traditional masculinity is expected to be like, but it is masculinity. And then you see that come back towards the end of the movie when they need to do drag to dress in drag to like sneak their way in and climb up the poles in the same way. It's that resourcefulness, that cleverness that Mulan as Ping exhibits. And I feel really bad because every time I say Mulan as she's doing this, I'm like, is this dead naming? I don't think so. The movie seems to say that Mulan is like comfortable being a woman, uh, but like maybe that wasn't on their radar. I don't really know. But in any case, the things, the traits exhibited are not what was expected, but it's still it is still sufficient to like for admittance into masculinity, I guess is a way of saying it. So yeah, I just thought it was really interesting. I wanted to blather about it for a little bit, especially because I didn't really have much else to talk about. There wasn't a whole lot to say with the Trump arraignment, so just wanted to blather a bit before I signed off here. I know it's been kind of short yesterday and today. I just don't really have much to talk about, and I don't want to like force myself to fill the time. But I hope this has really been interesting for people. I think I will actually just cut it pretty briefly here, and then tomorrow we'll do like a full debate review, so we have like a longer stream. But I'm still working my way back into things, having been gone for about a week, and I worry a bit. I don't want to talk. I don't want to just feel like I'm talking just to talk, just to fill the time. But I hope this has been interesting to you. It certainly helps when I get feedback from chat in order to do more. But I think I guess to like sum up what we already talked about, I know there's another actually going back to how long I stream. There's another thing I notice is compared to other streamers that I watch is that I just have fewer pauses that aren't as long and I speak really quickly, so I can get through a lot of my thoughts in like oh okay 15 minutes we're done with all the thoughts on that. If I took more time with it, that we would go for longer, and I think that'll be more appropriate when I'm getting feedback from chat. We're responding. I'm waiting for people to respond to me. And so, as I say, if you want more content, the way you can do that is by liking, commenting, subscribing, doing all the YouTube things. Get the word out. Be much appreciated. But that all said, we talked about Trump arraignment, talked about confidence, and why Trump isn't a confident guy, is in fact extremely insecure. And it's like I really want to hammer that in because it bothers me how much he's considered this strongman, confident dude when he's just paper thin skin. As to borrow a phrase from a friend of mine, he's soft as baby thighs. Um, Poo poo pee pee. Thank you, puppy bite. I appreciate quality quality chats. Thank you very much. But yeah, you know what? That's a real thinker. It makes me. It's gonna give me a lot to mull over, to think about. But hey, thanks for showing up. Unless there's something like y'all want me to go over, I don't really have much else that I want to talk about. I guess we can blather a little bit about the actual indictment stuff. But what if PP Pupio? Ooh, I'm mixing it up there. Um, yeah, I guess just to blather a little bit longer. I did. I'm not gonna go over it. It's so long. It's so long. I'm not going over it. But I did. I did watch some people talking about these indictment papers, and they are very very interesting. As from what I've seen, this is 49 pages approximately, because you have all this stuff at the top that's not that, of here's the evidence, and it's overwhelming. It seems really unlikely to me, a layperson who does not know what he's talking about, but it seems really unlikely that Trump could be acquitted of these charges, barring something absolutely wild, like extreme prosecutorial misconduct from the prosecutors, like something really really wild, where like, okay, well yeah, that's gonna be a mistrial kind of thing. But I just don't see how he could be acquitted. This evidence is pretty overwhelming, and if it wouldn't if I hadn't already seen people go over this and didn't know how long it takes to go through all of this, I would go over it myself. But this is a lot of stuff in it, and I would expect here's a really good example. This is a conversation with Trump, a staffer, and a writer, where he's basically just saying out loud, "Yeah, I'm not allowed to have this, but like here." So Trump, well, with senior military official, let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack country A. Isn't that amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look, this was him. They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this. This was him. This was the Defense Department and him. This is him out loud saying like, "Oh yeah, like I can't show you this, but like here's here are things I'm not allowed to have." Um, and saying, "Oh yeah," and then going on to say, except it's like highly confidential, talking about these papers he's showing them, and it's secret. It's secret. Look at this. This is secret information. Look at this. Um, saying stuff like, "Oh, it's you're not allowed to look at it, so don't get too close." Like, "Oh, don't get close enough to look at it." But I'm, what, and the staffers even saying we'll have to try to, and Trump filling in, declassify it, knowing that it's not declassified. So this is the kind of stuff that's in here, and it seems pretty damning. Maybe this is why the expectation from the DOJ is that the trial won't take very long. But I guess we'll see, and we'll see what all comes from all this. But having John on even that little bit more, we talked about that. Talked a little bit about confidence. I mused on Mulan, and don't really have much more I want to go over. So thanks all so much for watching. We'll do a debate review tomorrow. We'll go at it at length. We'll find a debate review, and we'll take as long as it takes. If we're here for 5 hours, we're here for 5 hours. I want to get back into the swing of things. Thanks so much for watching, though, and I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.